Hello, everyone. Welcome back. Episode 5. Joe Maleev was feeling more than a little anxious. The extra large bulletin board in his office was festooned with all manner of newspaper clipping, sketches, height maps, and profiles, all to do with Katanga. And he was no closer now to deciphering anything that could help him accost her than he was when all this started. He glanced at the wall behind his desk and chuckled. At least that bulletin board was finally getting some respect. Maleev hadn't laid a finger on it since he had this office. One needed a sweetly delicate touch to ace this part. She carefully wedged the L-shaped device into the lower section. Then, she turned the thing clockwise, then anti-clockwise, until she felt a familiar jolting tension. Holding the device firmly but gently in that position, the cat inserted a long, thin blade-like structure with a slightly curved end into the opening above. She was a master puppeteer, and her teensy-weensy baby puppets were all lodged in a sort of zigzag row inside a narrow keyhole, waiting to be freed. Soon, my darlings, soon. Or then again, she could be a surgeon. Surgeon? She liked the sound of that. And this was a most delicate procedure. Obviously, it required the very best, a masterful practitioner. The graceful wrist waltz continued. Then suddenly, click, the door was unlocked. The tall, heavy-set man ambled along the aisles. He checked the serial number on the spine, 516.3. He replaced it in its proper slot. He waddled a few feet down the aisle, pushing the book-laden cart. 516.4. He replaced another book. The oversized grey coveralls made his corpulent frame even more whale-like as he shuffled lazily down the aisles. Considering the unsavory result of his offenses, most people would agree that stocking bookshelves in a prison library was quite the cushy sanction. Prisoner 1995365. The whale-like structure spun around with surprising alacrity. Given time, well-practiced prison authorities had the uncanny ability to elicit almost any response for a man, especially a soft-in-the-belly white-collar criminal whose greatest ambition before prison had been to live off the spoils of his selfishly reckless decisions. There was a visitor to see him, a detective. Joe Maleev, or something like that. More trouble, sir? The sarcasm was searing. Well, I guess you're already where you should be in that case. The cruel guard cackled at his graceless joke. The former principal knew better than to respond. The guard spun around. Understanding the silent command, prisoner 1995365 obediently shuffled out of the library in a slow cadence behind the jailer. What could Joe Maleev still want with him? He hoped the guard hadn't actually been right. What if there were still other accusations the detective had found to leveled against him? Most days he was too dazed to realize which way was up. This was not the kind of life he could have ever envisioned himself enduring. He would confess to just about anything at this point. He was just too frightened and hopeless to care much anymore. The dual dog face must have doubled over 3 or 4 times since Maleev last saw him. If he could have dared, the fallen prince principal would have begged and grovelled more pathetically than any puppy dog to be somehow salvaged from his chastisement. Maleev was absolutely sure of that. The detective allowed the former prince principal a few minutes to get used to his presence. When was the last time you saw Katanga? The detective was not in the mood for idle chit-chat with a convicted felon. Least of all, one who had put so many young lives in jeopardy. The former principal stared at the detective for a few seconds, completely stumped. Maleev stared back. Surely, this man did not think Maleev had driven all the way out here to talk about the weather or any other such nonsense for that matter. The prince principal was non-existent on the detective's list of priorities. If Maleev was here, this man had better believe it was because the detective believed he may have important information. So, when was the last time he had heard from Katanga? I haven't heard from her since. I really can't remember. The veteran detective could sniff out a lie from miles away. The prisoner heaved his ponderous mass off the seat in shock, slumping back in a most ungainly fashion. Maleev had slapped his hand across the table in a knee-jerk second. The pudgy former principal had not seen it coming. As naturally even-tempered as he was, Joe Maleev Marty was not averse to harshly persuasive behavior when the situation called for it. And he had used all kinds of persuasion during his long tenure. You better stop talking. Believe me, you do not want to know the nastier side of what this prison has to offer. The former prince principal shuddered in trepidation. The result of that action was a wobbling mass of loose flesh bobbing crazily at all angles in a fatty cascade. Joe Maleev was almost too disgusted to watch. The former principal blurted out his confession in fits and starts. Gulping pitifully at random intervals. His daughter had contacted him recently. I received a letter, he said shamefaced. When? About a month ago. It was encoded, as the former principal turned prison had known it would be. She developed this code when she was really young. The former principal explained that whenever she had needed to communicate something in writing, his daughter would often use that code, just for fun. Thank you for listening. Please do well to subscribe, like, and comment. Thank you.